Hola mis amigas and welcome to the final video of release week. I have had so much fun this week sharing with you guys the story and the process of how I self-published my debut novel, Free. So I know that a lot of you guys are hoping to self-publish your own works someday, and so I thought you might be curious as to how much I spent self-publishing Free. So I went back through my receipts and whatnot and calculated up how much I invested in getting this baby out into the world. Now, a friendly disclaimer slash friendly reminder before we get started: just because this is how much I spent does not necessarily mean this is how much you need to spend, or if you spend more or less than this, that you've spent too much or spent too little. How much you spend on self-publishing a book is entirely up to you and up to what you need, what your book needs, what you want, and of course your budget as well. So how much authors spend self-publishing their books varies widely, and just because what you spend, what you invest doesn't match what I did or what I invested, doesn't necessarily mean that you manage your money any less wisely. It just comes down to what you need and to what your book needs. So that aside, let's get into how much I spent getting Free self-published. So I've broken this down into two sections. The first section is just how much it costs to publish this, how much it costs to get me this book into my hands. And then the other section is kind of more marketing related things that I needed to have in place in order to best get this book out into the world, but weren't technically publishing costs. They didn't technically apply as, something that was a cost to me to actually get the book printed. But they were things that I did need to have in place. So we'll get to those in a minute, it'll make more sense. So as far as publishing this book, what it cost me. So I published this book through KDP and IngramSpark, through both those platforms. KDP stands for Kindle Direct Publishing. It is Amazon's self-publishing program, and IngramSpark is an independent program that can supply Amazon, but I used KDP to supply Amazon and I used IngramSpark to get my own copies. If you are interested in knowing why I chose both of those platforms, and particularly why I chose to use them in the ways I did, do let me know, because I think that could be a fun video, but that would be a little lengthy for today's video. So for today, I'm just going to focus on how much it cost me to upload to both of those. I'm actually holding an IngramSpark copy right now, if you are curious. So IngramSpark, unlike KDP, which is free to upload, does have an uploading fee. IngramSpark's uploading fee is normally $50 plus, I believe it's $25 revisions after that. Now, I didn't have to worry about revisions because the book was pretty much good to go by the time I was uploading it to IngramSpark, but it didn't really matter because I had a coupon that was good through March 31st for free uploads and free revisions, so I was able to save a lot of money that way. And speaking of saving money, it was important to me to try to find as many discounts and things like that as possible because I was working on a pretty limited budget, but I also wanted to be clever about how I saved money so that I wasn't compromising on quality in any way. Like, I knew I had a budget, but I didn't want to just be like, oh, I have a budget, so I'm going to cut corners here. I wanted to make sure I still produced a quality piece of work, even with maybe spending a little bit more on the conservative side when it came to publishing my book. So one of the ways, and really the biggest way in which I saved money, is in the things that I did myself that you might normally hire out. And those things were cover design, formatting, and editing. I talked in yesterday's video about how I went about the self-editing process. Now, I didn't edit this book entirely myself, but I did not spend anything on editing, and that saved me a lot of money. Editing is incredibly expensive, and based on some of the other videos that I've watched of other self-published authors talking about how much they spent, it appears to me that editing is usually one of the most expensive parts of the process and can be thousands of dollars. And so by self-editing this book, I saved a lot of money, but I also took a lot of time. It took me, I want to say it was like a few years, it ended up being, of time in which I spent, not just me, but me and the people who helped me spent editing this book. And so we took a long time on it, and so I'm very confident in how this turned out, but more on that in yesterday's video. So the cover design was something that I spent a lot of time practicing on. Even though I wasn't going to hire a cover designer, I still wanted it to look like a real, for lack of a better word, book cover. So I spent a ton of time looking at other book covers in similar genres. Christian young adult historical fiction is still a pretty small genre, so there wasn't a whole lot to look at as far as like super comparable stuff, but I did look at similar books, and so that helped me get a feel for how to lay things out. I did redraw the cover illustration a few times. I talked more about that in my cover reveal video that I did, I think a couple months ago. So I will leave a link to that if you are interested, but yes, I spent a lot of time kind of studying, for lack of a better word, cover design so that I could make sure I got something in the end that looked like a familiar book cover. One of the mistakes that I see a lot in the self-publishing industry is that people will get a book cover that really doesn't look like a book cover, or it looks like a book cover for a completely different kind of book. Like it might be, you know, let's say it was a historical fiction story and maybe it ends up looking like a biography or a historical nonfiction or something like that. So you want to make sure that it looks recognizable as what kind of story, what kind of book it is. So that was important to me. I spent a lot of time on that. I spent time looking at other books to get an idea for how the formatting should be. I watched some YouTube videos on that. So even though I did a lot of this myself, I made sure to put in a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of studying into these things so that I could be proud of the end result and so that I could know it was still a good quality piece of work even though I didn't end up paying anything for those services. So other things that I paid for in order to get this book printed, I spent $1 on getting artwork scanned for the cover and for the bookmarks that I sent to people who pre-ordered the book. I got that done over at Office Depot. And then I spent $320 on ISBNs, including a barcode. Now, I didn't really take this into account when I was tallying up everything, but that was 10 ISBNs and a barcode. So I actually saved a lot of money by buying 10 ISBNs at once. Normally they are more expensive per one if you only buy 1 or 5 or whatever. So I saved money in the long run and I won't have to buy ISBNs for a long time now. But that was the most expensive purchase of this entire process, was those ISBNs. That was quite a big chunk. That was quite a lot of money at once to just like let go on something. It was kind of like, okay, yeah, okay, buying our ISBNs. But yeah, so I spent $320 on ISBNs. I spent $7.27 on getting my Amazon proof copy, which I have on the other side of the room. And then I spent $121.99 getting my Ingram Spark author copies. So I also had a coupon for that, and I didn't calculate exactly how much that saved me, but it did save me some more money, which was important, obviously, because, you know, I was trying to save money wherever I could while still, you know, being reasonable. So that brings us to how much I spent just to get the book published. So just to get the book published, I spent $450.26. So like I said, there were some other expenses that I had to take care of in order to be ready to market this book effectively, so I'm going to go through those now. Hey guys, so editing Karina here. First of all, I can't believe that I literally happened to be wearing the exact same outfit today as I was the day that I videoed this video originally. But anyway, so I did decide to go ahead and calculate up real quick how much it cost for me to publish my book, like to get the copy into my hands, without the cost of the extra ISBN. So if you take into account just the 2 ISBNs that I used and the barcode, because I had an ISBN for the paperback and an ISBN for the ebook. So if you take out the cost of the other ISBNs that I purchased, instead of spending $450.26, it comes down to $214.26. So you can tell I spent a lot of extra money on those extra ISBNs, and while those of course are included in the final total of how much I spent on the whole thing during this whole process, I did think that it might be good for you guys to see what it looked like without those extra ISBNs, because that did take it down quite a bit. So even though I bought those extra ISBNs, those didn't really technically contribute to this book, obviously, so technically on getting this book ready to print off and getting it printed off, I only spent $214.26, if that makes any sense. The essential ones were my website, which cost me $84. That was actually with a 50% off coupon. The domain name is free for the first year, so I did not have to pay for that. I just had to spend the $84 to get on like a paid plan so I could put my site out there. And then I am currently using the free form of an email platform, so I'm not paying for the newsletter platform that I'm using right now because I don't have enough subscribers to make where I have to pay for it at this point. And that's all fine and good, but there is a hidden little something that I realized I would have to do, and that was get a P.O. box. So whenever you have a mass newsletter that you're sending out, like, you know, through an automated system where you put in the newsletter and it sends it out to the people, like MailChimp, which is what I use, you have to include an address. And I personally did not feel comfortable putting my home address onto something that was being sent out to potentially complete strangers. So I got a P.O. box so that I could put that on there, because by law you have to have an address, but you can have a P.O. box. So I put my P.O. box address on there so that way that was on there and I didn't have to use my home address. It just felt safer and more comfortable for me, especially since this is not just my home, this is also my family's home, so I didn't want to, you know, just be putting our address out there for everybody to see. I felt more comfortable getting a P.O. box. So my email platform was free, I got a P.O. box. The P.O. box was $46 for, I believe it's 6 months, and I think I forgot to mention, but the website fee that I paid for, the $84, is for the first year, so I don't have to pay that every month, that's just for the first year. And then these other things were technically optional. They came with the pre-ordering process that I chose to use. I did not know until I already had committed to doing a pre-order that Amazon does not do paperback pre-orders, they only do ebook pre-orders, so I had to do the paperback pre-orders myself, and so I had to get some mailers to send those out with. Those cost me $7.87, and then I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do some fun artwork to send to people who pre-ordered the book, and so I commissioned some art to have that done for me by Pearl Evangeline Art. She did an amazing job, and I will, if I remember, link to her Instagram down below. And that cost me $60. So there was that. She did an amazing job. I absolutely loved how that art turned out. And then I personally printed off some bookmarks with my art on them at Staples, and that cost me $2.25. So in total, all of this together, including the stuff that I talked about earlier with the $450.26, added to these fees is $650.38. So that is how much I spent on all those different aspects that I just told you about. Now, there were some other things that I didn't really track, and what I'm thinking of at the moment as I say that is making my costume for the book trailer and the props that I used for the book trailer. So I started making the pieces to that costume quite a while ago, and so I decided I wasn't really going to go to the trouble of digging through old receipts to figure out exactly how much I spent on that costume that I'm wearing in the book trailer, which I believe came out 2 days ago. It came out on release day. So I'm guessing that the amount that was spent on that, because some of the parts or fabric or whatever that I made that costume with were gifts. I didn't spend all my own money on that costume. There was some, you know, things that people bought for me. But I'm guessing that the cost of that costume plus the props was somewhere from $50 to $75, in case you are curious as to that. So there was that. But yes, that aside, in total I spent $650.38 on self-publishing my book. Now, in case you're curious as to where I got this money from, I had been starting to save $10 to $20 from each of my paychecks for, I want to say it had been like a year or so that I'd been doing that, maybe not quite that long, and I've continued to, most of the time, save that much from each of my paychecks just to continue to put towards some of the other fees that I was dealing with. I mean, they were all things that I just talked about, but you know, as some of those things came up, that way I had money saved up and I have not had to go into any debt to publish my book, and that has been a big blessing. I had most of that money already saved away, and so the rest, what was left, which I want to say I think over half of what I ended up spending already saved up by the time I started this process. And then just continuing to set aside some money from each paycheck, I was able to just spend that, and that's what I spent on this book. I didn't have to cut into my paychecks with huge amounts because I am saving up for college, and I also didn't have to go into debt. So that was a big blessing. So yeah, I knew beforehand that I was going to be publishing a book, so I started saving early so that way I would have, I believe it's called like a sinking fund, available for me, especially because there were some expenses like the P.O. box that came up that I wasn't planning on. So in case you were curious as to how I paid for it, that's how I paid for it. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know what shocked you most about this video? Was there anything that you didn't expect? Was there anything that you did expect that I actually didn't end up doing or whatever? Like, let me know what your thoughts are. Were you surprised at all by this video? Were you surprised at all at what I ended up telling you about how much I spent and what I spent it on and how I saved money and things like that? And I hope that this video, as always, has encouraged you, maybe inspired you, I don't know, but I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you've enjoyed my series of videos on release week. If you haven't watched those already, there will be a playlist down in the description with all of the release week videos in it so that you can watch them all and learn more about the story of how I published my debut novel. So thank you for watching this video. I will see you next time in the next video. Until then, get out there and write the story that God called you to write, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.